kids do go off on tangents, and they do still need me to manage the class and manage the flow, and make sure that we're being respectful and that everyone feels safe. But as far as like a unit plan, so kind of the way we plan for the unit is we try to take all of the standards, the core standards that we have, and then we kind of develop a big idea or a statement that can, as we ask questions, can encompass each of those standards. And then we come up with what would those questions be? So if this is the big idea we're going to present to the kids, what are the questions that they're going to need to be able to answer to really capture the essence of what we want them to understand about that big idea? And so we kind of think through it as a kid. If this was a statement given to me, what questions would I ask about it? And those become the essential questions that when our kids generate questions, I know those have to be in the list. And if they're not, I have to figure out how to get them there, whether I pose them, whether I bring them up to a table, whether I add them to the list after we've all gone and I'm writing it up. Do I just add them in? Whatever my strategy is for that, those are the non-negotiables. Those have to be there to be looked at. And then from there, it kind of just becomes a list of how could we get the answers to those. So some of them, what is motion? That's just going to be researched, so that's not a problem. But how does weight affect motion, or how does weight affect force, or what are mass and weight? What's gravity? We try to come up with a list, or go about talking to other teachers, other districts, things we've learned, and we kind of just try to compile a list of ideas for how we could answer that question. So I could run this investigation, I could run this investigation, and it becomes more about a bank of ideas as opposed to a lockstep lesson. So we ask this question and we run this investigation. We ask this question, we run this investigation. So it's more about, if the kids go to question 6 first, these are the ideas I could use to figure out question 6. If they start with question 1, then this is what we'll do. If they go to question 10, here's the list of ideas that we can use to answer question 10. And so it's more about having things to pull from rather than having a set unit plan that I follow from top to bottom. And that, I think, for me, makes lesson planning more freeing. I'm very scripted, so I like to have things written out. I'm OCD. I keep everything all the time. My sub plans are 4 and 5 pages long because I want everything written exactly the way it is. But I like the freedom of not having to do the same thing all the time. It's kind of a way to craft, if the ideas that are necessary and really connected to the big idea aren't coming up in the conversation, it's how can I get those into the conversation. And I feel like at the beginning of the year, I do use a lot of, I heard Mr. Steenhook's class ask this question. Like, do you think that would be something that might help us get where we need to go? So it's still kind of my idea, and where I know based on the standards they need to go, but it's also giving them ownership to say, yeah, and they would hate for another class to know more, get further than them, so they have that buy-in. But as the year goes on, they really see me more as a learner when I'm going, I don't know, why do you think that? Why, they kind of accept that I'm not going to give them an answer. And as we get more into the middle of the year, I can pose the question as myself and just say, I don't know why this is happening. And they don't, at that point in the year, they don't know whether I do know or I don't know. And they're willing to see me as a learner too. So when we talk about generating big idea questions, or there's a part of something in the negotiation that I don't think we quite have a good understanding of, I can pose that question and they'll buy into, oh man, she doesn't really know what she's talking about. We got to help, we got to help her figure this out because we're all trying to move forward together. Here's what I heard you say. No, but you did say this. Yeah, but that's not what I meant. Okay, so how are we going to craft it to make sure that what we mean is really what we're saying? And so I think kids discover the power of language. And what I love about that too is it connects the classes they're having in school so much more. I'm not just having science and then I forget everything that happened in science when I go to math, then I forget everything that happened there. What you're doing in language arts matters. Language is important. You have to learn the vocabulary or what the word means so that you're using it correctly. you know, and how you're writing and the structure that you're writing is important. If you want someone to agree and believe what you're saying, you have to write it so that it sounds like you know what you're saying. And there are different formats, and I think that's really important for kids. And I think they have to have an equal opportunity to do both. Speaking for some is much more comfortable. They like to talk. Lots off topic usually, but but they have to understand that their words have power and that the words they choose are really important to convey their meaning. And that is an important thing, I think, to bring attention to kids. And that's what you said. Even if it's not what you meant, if that's what you said, people can take that different ways. We've got to be very, very particular about what we're saying. But I think writing is very important to give them a time to slow down. That, I think, is where they really slow down and can really have a chance to think about, what do I believe? Because I think when kids talk, it's very fast, and they're not always taking the time to think before they speak, and that's sometimes where they get caught up. But when they have to write it, it's such a good opportunity for them, because I have to think about it in my head. Now I have to figure out how to get it onto the paper and make sure that when you read it and I'm not there, you're going to get the same message that I could convey to you if I was talking to you. And that is harder for kids, and the thinking that they have to do is so good. It's a challenge, and we have to build up to it, but it's so good. And I think that's the moments where, as a teacher, I'm like, holy smokes, like, they explained it. I would never have said it like that or done it like that. And they learn that writing doesn't just have to be words. I can put in pictures, and I can bring in pieces of different things that I want, a graph or a chart or those multimodal pieces that can make what I'm trying to say even more powerful to whoever's reading it. But I can convey a lot with my words and my body language that I can't convey that don't come through when I write it. So I have to figure out, and I think that just steps it up just a little bit more of, do I really know it or don't I?